Let me welcome you to the November user group of Microsoft Fabric here in Switzerland. And today, as usual, we're going to record the session. And what we're going to talk about is I will kick off with the latest and greatest. Then I will hand over to Alex, who will talk about how to create a custom Power Query connector within Microsoft Fabric. And afterwards, we will have Gerhard, who will talk about Power BI and Fabric Studio for Visual Studio Code. And to bring it up from the beginning, probably you saw it through my mails or through LinkedIn or whatever. I'm a little bit seeking for feedback together with Dennis for the user group to improve it as much as possible. Meaning that you can provide feedback what kind of topics you're interested in. Is the timing okay? Is the day okay? Whatever. I would really love to get your feedback. So feel free to scan the code or visit the URL over there and provide it. And we will analyze it in December and see what we can then optimize for the next year and giving you even more value out of this user group. So let's start right into, as I know that we have two great speakers and I want to give them enough time. A few announcements. We will have, again, a Fabric for Breakfast this year organized together with Betelligent and Microsoft in the Circle, so here in Zurich. If you're interested in, feel free to check out the Betelligent website following the link here. And it will happen on the 6th of December. In the morning. Well, entry is at 8, but the official start of the presentation will be at 8:30, so that people have enough time to join. And yes, you will get some breakfast. That's the reason why it's also called Fabric for Breakfast, so you can really sign up and attend. The next one is also very nice to mention, the Fabric Community Conference in Europe. We had one in Stockholm, as you know, hopefully, and the next one next year will happen in Vienna from 15th to 18th September. If you wish to keep up to date, here is the link, or you just quickly search for it, Fabric European Conference, and you will find all the latest and greatest at the end over there. And the Fabric Career Hub, I always mention that and highlighting it because if you're interested in getting to know Fabric, it's a great website, a great resource to do so. As you can learn there, you can get even discounts for certifications. So a great way to start with Microsoft Fabric. All right, let's talk a little bit of what's new in the Power BI world. And we increased a little bit the Copilot capabilities, meaning if you prompt now, for example, you wish to create a new page in Power BI, you will get on top a description of what Copilot has done. So what kind of page has been created, and it explains the visuals, it explains the metrics that has been added to it, so that you get a little bit more transparency at the end, what has happened. Not gonna to demo that, as I hope it's quite clear. It's just an add-on to the capabilities of Copilot that we have already to give you just more transparency at the end. Questions to that? Doesn't look like. Okay, moving on. Again, something Copilot related. We will not have suggestions with Copilot anymore when it comes to the quick measure feature. Instead, you can go to the DAX query view and use Copilot in the DAX query view to get some help creating DAX statements. That's also a little bit of a change. You see it in the screenshot. This is how it was, that you had here suggestions with Copilot if you go for quick measures. And now if you click on quick measure, you will see that this is gone, and there will be a small text saying, hey, you can go to DAX query view and use Copilot over there. Just that you know that as well. Another one, also a little bit to easy up things, is an update in visual calculation. On one hand, now combo charts are supported, so you can create visual calculations on combo charts. A nice one from my point of view is that we support now field parameters in combination with visual calculations. So that could be quite powerful, that you can have field parameters and then really influence how the visual should look like and what should be calculated on top of it. And the template that has been already there are now even more accessible through the button. You see it here below. If I say new visual, you can click on the drop-down menu and you will have the different kind of templates that you can select from and create automatically this way a visual calculation.
Pardon my ignorance, what are field parameters?
Field parameters, in short, is imagine you have like a table or multiple tables, let's say 3 different dimensions, one for customer, one for geography, and one for product. And through field parameter, you can combine those 3 into one visual, for example, let's say a filter visual. And through it, you can select, let's say, customer. And the visual itself will then show a bar chart based on revenue by customer, for example. But if you then go through the visual and say, I wish to have it geographic, then the visual itself changes the axis to geographic instead of having product. It's a really nice way to interact and to make it more customizable for end users on what they wish to analyze. That's, in short, how field parameters would work. Make sense?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Alex. He just posted a link in the chat. If you have access to it, it's really a great way for dynamically changing measures and dimensions. That's a great way to explain it. Yes. All right. Moving on. New updates when it comes to visuals. We have a new list slicer visual. Right now it's in preview. I played just a little bit around with it. I don't see a big difference right now, but from the website, what we promise, it will be quite powerful in near future. If you wish to test it out, feel free. You would need to enable it through the preview features, through the options in Power BI Desktop. But once there, you will see a new icon, and then you can leverage it. But as mentioned, right now, not a big difference. I don't know if Alex has some other experience, but I would say the really good stuff will come in near future.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people starting to dig into this here since the release, and a lot of very interesting designs. Okay. So definitely check out the hashtag PBI Core Visuals. People are coming up with some very cool, kind of like a UX type of experience where it's very stylized, very high done. I agreed, Chris. When I first looked at this, it's like, I don't really know if this is the big stuff yet, but people are starting to blow my mind as they're doing a lot more customization.
Okay. Thanks for that. But I'm sure there will even more come in the future. All right. Moving on, announcement that we will retire Teams activity analytics. So for those who don't know what it is, where to find, if you're using Microsoft Teams, within Teams, you can add an app, Power BI. And if you go to this app within Teams, there is a button where you can say, analyze your Teams data. And you will get an out-of-the-box report. So this button, this is what I mean. And you will get an out-of-the-box report showing you the last 90 days, like how many chats you have, how many calls, duration, and stuff out of your Teams activity at the end. And end of this year, we will retire it. And the reason is Teams itself offers already a comprehensive analytics view. That's the reason why we do not need to, let's say, duplicate it in Power BI as well. And for those who are interested in those numbers, I added here the official link to the Teams offering, so you can check it out over there. For those who are using it, what will happen on 1st of January? At the end, you will not be able to create these reports anymore. And if you have created the report already, the data will just not update anymore. That's how the retirement will look like. Moving on, if there are no questions. Right. Talking about retirement, we will also retire the real-time streaming in Power BI. So for those who used it, it means we will retire it by end of October 27. So meaning your existing real-time will still work until then. But from 1st of November, you cannot create any more real-time streaming jobs in Power BI itself. And here again, as an alternative, what we offer is within the Microsoft Fabric world, you can leverage real-time intelligence, probably better known as Custo, ADX, whatever. It's the real-time intelligence within Microsoft Fabric. You can have an event house or an event stream for real-time streaming at the end. And lastly, this is something I want to just demo, but before I do so, quick theory. We have now a public preview feature which allows you to influence the filter behavior on measures if you have different filter statements coming from the same table. And what exactly it means is following. Imagine I have a simple table like this one, where I have some years, products, and colors. And I have two different kinds of slicers, one for year and one for color. And I have now one measure which says, give me the number of all products of all years. And in this case, if I select 2023 and select blue and red, you per default right now, it's a combination of both filters. So it searches for the year 2023 and the color blue or red. And if those two combinations are met, I will get here a number. And at the end, it says, as you can see here, 6. But now, if I change my filter to 2024, so the year has changed. Again, it's an year 23 and the color. The number of products has decreased because in this combination, I have one less product. But probably that's not what you're looking for. Probably you want to have it independent, meaning that regardless of what I choose within my year, it shouldn't be an AND statement on my color slicer. And that's the reason why we have now this kind of filter behavior setting, which you can influence. Right now, it's per default automatic, and which means nothing has changed right now. But what you can do is you can say it should be independent. And in such a case, I will still have the number 6 as the number of all products or across the years instead of 5. Right now, this is public preview. It was mentioned that once we go general available with it, that the automatic behavior will be independent and not coalesced. Just that you know. And to show that, I have a quick report. So you see, this is my really nice quick report I created with my table. Just here have a count of all the different years and colors. And on the right-hand side, if I select now, for example, only 2024, I see that the number of all products is still 6. If we go to 23, it's still 6, didn't change. Only the number of products for this specific year has changed. And how did I do so is if I go to model view, model, and select my semantic model, let me show that here to my model view. I select semantic model. I have here now a property which I can really influence how the filter behavior should be. And if I say, for example, let's go with automatic, go back to my report and select now 2024, you see it really changed now to 5 because it's now combining both filter statements because they are coming from the same table. Does that make sense? Any questions to that? Right? Doesn't look like. So, as promised, roughly 15 minutes, and I'm done. With that, I'm really happy to introduce to you Alex, or Alex will introduce himself, I'm sure, who will talk about building your first Power Query connector in Microsoft Fabric. So, Alex, the stage is all yours.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, then let's get a confirmation here that you can see the screen.
Yes, we
I'll
can
come
see.
on, do the fun introduction stuff here. As you can see, I'm hanging out in these nice green fields of Windows XP. Uh, just first and foremost, thank you everyone for your time and attendance. It's user groups and communities like these that really help us drive just an insane amount of enthusiasm from folks. So whether it's like end of your day, whether it's the start of your day, and you're like, hey, I just want to kind of hang out with some people like-minded, just learn a little bit of things as well. Again, just deeply appreciative of your time. Today, we are going to be talking about an extremely niche topic. I actually feel bad because like this is so in the weeds. But whenever Kristian kind of extended the invite and he said, I want you to do that one, I was like, are you sure? And he said, yes, please. I was like, all right. I'm very excited, but I don't know how the audience is going to feel. Let me first start, though, with introducing myself, just so we can kind of ground the experience. My name is Alex Powers. I work at Microsoft. I'm a member of our Fabric Customer Advisory Team, or Fabric Cat, if you kind of see us across the socials. In the bottom left-hand corner here, I'm very active on Reddit, over on Blue Sky as well, LinkedIn, and then also Twitter. They're kind of like my Pokemon. I think I have to catch them all in terms of different social media websites. Please connect, especially if this type of stuff is important to you, if you're interested in kind of data integration. I'm always excited to learn from you. Professional background, though. I'm not a deep developer. I'm not a deep data analytics person. I'm an Excel person at heart. So for me, started with Excel, this whole crazy, amazing Power Query and Power Pivot stuff that changed everything. I eventually went to a dashboard in a day, and like that was like the light bulb for me. I was like, oh my goodness, if I could do all this stuff in Excel over here with Power BI and then kind of leveraging the cloud to kind of handle all my scheduled refreshes, like I could really see where this stuff is going. Of course, as you do more and more, you start ending up with maybe some databases, access to the cloud here with Azure. Then we introduced and dropped Microsoft Fabric on everyone. So equally, my head is spinning of all these new things that I can do, kind of using notebooks, using Python, using low code, using pro code, whatever it is. Then this GPT thing happened. I don't know if you recall that weekend too. Like everything just went viral. It was all chatbots that weekend. I don't know what the next 5 years looks like for my career. So I just put question mark, question mark, question mark here. But of course, ultimately aiming for the CEO spot. So, I've got on my whiteboard, stare at it every day. But past that, I'm a co-organizer of our local community as well here in St. Louis for Power BI and Microsoft Fabric. So again, I'm a deep believer in these type of communities. And then if you see me out and about, I am always shouting from the rooftops, Power Query everything. It's my absolute favorite language. It really changed my career as well. Personal, just so you don't think I'm a robot. Again, I'm a moderator over on Power BI on Reddit. We have over 138,000 members now. We are almost larger than the actual business intelligence subreddit, which is crazy to think about. Past that, we also have Microsoft Fabric that's maybe a year and a few months old now in terms of our subreddit, but 7.2 thousand members. Kind of like that deep pause right now. 138 versus 77.2. So can you imagine when more and more people start discovering Microsoft Fabric from our Power BI community, just like me, from Excel to Power BI into Microsoft Fabric? Oh my goodness. We could have the largest developer platform for data and analytics purely just with the breadth of our experiences, whether it's low code, whether it's pro code, whether you're a business analyst, technical analyst, IT professional, whatever it is. My goodness, just we're all collaborating around our data. That's so exciting for me to think about, that we'll have so many more new people joining these user communities, that we'll be sharing our notes of what you learned and what they're starting to learn, or maybe what they've tried and maybe what could help you with your solution. That's always just a great thing for me to reflect on. I do enjoy pineapple on my pizzas. I know we were kind of talking food at the very beginning of the day here. Likely that will be my lunch now that it's been incepted. And then I absolutely love my cats. We've got 2 cats here at home. I think we've got about 4 cats running through our yard daily that we've started to feed. So it's just a blast. It's an absolute blast. And then you may see me out and about on kind of the Guy in a Cube channels whenever they get a chance. I'm always hanging out talking about Power Query. Hopefully I'll be talking about some Power Query Copilot stuff here very soon. Just kind of waiting for 1 or 2 more features that I really want to highlight kind of for that group. Cool. Getting started. Let me drop something here within the chat. So I am going to have this here. Absolutely CEO big plans. Got to have it on the dream board. All right, so getting started. So first and foremost, there is a Power Query SDK. This is now generally available. So if you are using Visual Studio Code, you can go out there, you can install this extension. If you've never seen this before, hopefully I can kind of win you over. So even if you're using like Power BI Desktop today, you aren't going to build a custom connector. It does have autocomplete. It does have code formatting. It does have on-hover information. It is exactly what I want from an IntelliSense. Not integrated today in Power BI Desktop, not available today in like Power Query Online for data flows or Power Apps data flows. But this is what I want. So hopefully if you see it, please help me make some noise. Vote up those ideas over on ideas.fabric to say, hey, we want this Power Query IntelliSense integrated, and hopefully I can kind of win you over. Awesome. I want to do a language overview. Very, very, very high level, though. I don't want to take us too far in the weeds because we do have some time here that I want to spend actually building stuff. But this is an amazing diagram. I'll give you a moment here in deep reflection to kind of check this out here. We've got this any at the very top. We've got this none at the very bottom. We've got binary date, time zone, duration, logical number, null text type, time. Whew. And then, of course, we have these custom. So we have functions, we have lists, we have records, and we have tables. This is the Power Query /M, the informal name, formula language. These are the various types that are available. Is anyone here familiar with the language TypeScript? Kind of a variation of JavaScript, just with a type system. Is anyone familiar with TypeScript? Let me know in the chat. And remember this, we've got these any's, we've got these nones, we've got these different types here. TypeScript. All right, so it has the any at the very top. It has kind of the undefined, so the none cast values. It has primitive types like Boolean, you know, true or false. We have numbers, we have strings, we have unums, we have voids, object types, we have arrays. Of course, we got class and interfaces, and we also have parameters. Yeah, absolutely, Matthias. It's kind of helping with custom visuals as well. Yeah. So very similar here in terms of the definitions. Let's talk about like the let expressions, because they've got lets over in TypeScript as well, where let and const declarations define variables. There's scope to the running execution context. Identifiers in TypeScript. Here are some of the rules, can include both characters and digits. However, the identifier cannot begin with a digit. Identifiers cannot include special symbol, except for underscore or a $sign. Cannot be keywords, must be unique, blah, blah, blah. All right, that's TypeScript. I'm not too worried about that. What about Power Query? Hold on. Did anyone see that? Kristian, I don't know if you saw that. It was very subtle. I'm going to go back to TypeScript.
It looks like it's the same, right?
It's almost identical, right? The only thing that changed was this O or a $sign. That's about it. So storing identifiers that we can recall through intermediate calculations. So when we think about our Power Query steps, right, like we click the button, it records a new step. Like we've got our let source, the next row could be like selecting rows. So it's like a filter row step and that does the next thing. We're storing each one of those on the left-hand side as a variable that we can call back to, right? And then it does have these rules as well here in terms of our identifiers. Almost identical to other languages. So if you're like, you know, this Power Query thing, it's this low code, it's this point and click tool. Oh my goodness, it has this amazing functional language underneath it. And it's not too far off. Like if you have experience with other languages, it's just starting to wrap your head around, oh, this is how they do it over here. We have types, which we saw earlier, like the any, we've got nulls, we've got date times. If we were to kind of look at a structure here of comparing TypeScript objects versus Power Query M, they have a let system. Again, they've got this let for a record. Their key on the record is name, which we store a string called Power Query, another key, which is called language M. Here in Power Query, we can do the exact same thing. Ours is a little different here in terms of the actual brackets. We're square. They're kind of the squigglies. Very similar though. Power Query structured values. So we have values that can store other values. So here at the very top, we have a list item, which could store foo, bar, and then the 10. So we're storing 2 strings, then we're also storing a number. So a whole number there. Record type, again, this is kind of a key value pair. So when we call the key of A, we will return the value of 10. If we call the key B, we're going to expect to see 20. Here, this last one is a little interesting. Hash table, open parentheses, squiggly, animal count, close squiggly, a comma, another squiggly, cat 10, dog 20. It feels unreadable. Like from this like mashed up, it's all in one line. Like whenever you open the advanced letter, you just see everything kind of smushed together. That's why I'm a big fan of actual formatting the code. Which again, if we recall, the Power Query SDK has that available natively. So when we start dropping our code over there, we can start formatting it automatically. So when I look at it in this context, table, that first array here is our animal. So that's a column name array. So we've got 2 columns. One is called animal. The second one is called count. Our first row, kind of here within our table, is going to be cat and has value of 10. Second row is dog and 20. Just a lot more easy to understand when it's actually formatted. Again, one of those big things for me in Power Query M, it looks and feels like other languages, but because it's not formatted, we're always like, it's too overwhelming. I don't know what to do. Awesome. And then, of course, primitive values. This is where I wish I was a better instructor. I wish I was a better presenter. I'd be able to actually teach you things, but you know everything on this slide. There's nothing that I can teach you. You know what a logical type is, right? It's true or false. Yeah, you're right, Alex. You know what numbers are when you look at them. We've got 10, we've got -15, we've got 10.15, which is a decimal, right? So we got all these different types here, like integers, currency, decimal, a time. You know what time is? In this example here, hash time 15:05:15, so that's hours, minutes, seconds. So with 15, that's going to be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 05:15. Date, hash date 2022 06:30, so that's year, month, dates. If we look at date time combined, that's year, month, date, hour, minute, seconds. Of course, if we did time zone, year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds, offset for time zone, duration, days, hours, minutes, seconds. You know what text is, like hello world, binary. Of course, that's one a little bit more of a fringe use case. And then, of course, just functional programming. So if you're used to VBA, Python, C#, I don't know, any crazy language you're out there writing, we do support creating your own custom functions as well. Whew. All right, hello world. So in this example, we're going to get through kind of a connector development process where we're going to create an extension. We're going to go through some various testing, and then we're going to build and deploy. So in this way, we could actually start connecting to this in Power BI Desktop. So with that, let's get through to a demo out of this PowerPoint real quick. So the 2 links I dropped into the chat, I want to kind of point out to you. This is a repository where all of the materials that we're talking about today will be available for you right now. If you want the PowerPoint deck right here, you can go and download this PDF. This will have all the material for you. So if you're like, hey, Alex, you were just going way too fast, I couldn't keep up. Oh my goodness, sit back, enjoy the show, right? Download everything you need. If you wanted to build this custom connector yourself after today's event, you want to go through actual points and clicks and instructions, everything that we're going to do is going to be well documented here for you along with screenshots. So after today, if you're inspired, you're like, I'm going to start building my own. I really want to kind of go through that walkthrough that Alex did. Everything's documented here for you. All right, cool. So first and foremost, that Power Query SDK. Let's get into Visual Studio Code. You can go on the left-hand side here to extensions, and then you'll just want to type in Power Query, kind of up here in your search bar. So Power Query, you can then install the one for SDK. This is the previous version of it, but this is the full general availability release. Again, this goes through all the details here in terms of different functionalities like running your test queries, viewing some query results. So I don't even need to have Power BI Desktop open or Excel. I can view query results here natively within VS Code now. Just go ahead and hit install or enable at the very top. And then from there, if you've never kind of used VS Code before, the extension over here on our Explorer at the very bottom here. So let me go ahead and collapse this no folder open and then go to Power Query SDK. So in order to use this, we want to create an extension project. So if we recall that checklist here, we installed the extension. Now we're going to create a project. This one's going to be called Hello World. Our input. It's going to say, hey, Alex, where do you want to save this project? I'm just going to save it to ctemp for the purposes of today. Then cool. Awesome. So it's now installed all of these different things here for me in terms of my project. I've got my PQ. I've got my query.pq. Use this file to write queries to test in your data connector. I've got all the different icons. So if you think about whenever you open Power BI Desktop and you see that product icon for the various connectors, you can define those here within your connector as well. So just various resolutions. There's a higher one here for us. But the most important thing here is the definition of the connector. So at the very top here, we've got this hello world.contents, which has this optional message. I'm probably a little less worried about that, to be honest with you. And then give me one moment here. Just want to make sure I have this on my own screen as well. So I can choose to combine a nice salutation. So I could say, hello world, maybe my name, Alex, here at the very end. If I choose not to, then that's fine too. It'll just state no message was provided. What type of authentication does this connector require? So am I using like a key-based authentication, maybe username and password? Is it Windows? Is there some type of anonymous authentication, which I think will probably be good for this one. We really don't have a lot of definition in this example. And then at the very bottom here, just again, some of those connectors. So the first thing that I want to do is make sure we're just going to keep this as anonymous. And then we're going to go to our query. I want to go ahead and evaluate this current Power Query file. Credentials are required. All right, so let's take a look here. So my Power Query SDK, it's letting me know, hey, Alex, I know you've defined this as anonymous connection, but we've not really gone through the actual authentication process. All right, so in the Power Query SDK, I've got my set credentials. And I can also query all my previous credentials here. So let me do that, make sure I don't have anything remaining. We'll do a set credential. It's going to ask me for which data source. So it's my Hello World project that we defined earlier. Hello World. It's my Power Query test right here, that query.pq. And then I'm going to choose an anonymous authentication guide. Awesome. All right, so message successfully set the credentials, status equals success. If we were to try this again, do this now. Evaluate current Power Query. It's going through. Amazing. That's our query output. That's our preview here on the right-hand side. So if we were to execute this in Excel, if we were to execute this Power Query definition in Power BI Desktop, this is what we would expect to see, which is just going to be a string value here that returns this no message. Of course, if I was to include Alex Powers, let's try this again with an evaluate here, this current Power Query. Awesome. So I was able to submit some additional optional information as well, if we recall, where I can go ahead and concatenate values. So it's not just a literal, it could also be dynamic. So thinking like a web address, thinking like maybe like furry strings, all the different possibilities that we could have here within this connector. Awesome. And then let me take a look here. I think we're good. Whew. Let's actually build. So now that we have this definition ready, if I was to go to the temp file, I can see here, hello world. I've got all my values ready. My Power Query definition again. We're to close out over here, bring this over, and get rid of this test results. This is the current definition of my connector. It's going to return a string value, so a text data type. I want to go ahead and build this now. So I'm going to go up to, well, we're going to do something different. Let's make something a little bit bigger. I think in our next example. So let's do a new window. Awesome. And then does anyone remember how to create a new extension? How do I create a new Power Query extension? Does anyone recall here in VSCode?
Go to the Power Query SDK, right?
Ah, you're right. Yeah. So we go to the SDK, we create that new extension, and then it asks us, what do we want to call this kind of connector up here? So we want to call this Northwind. And then let me make sure I'm following along here with my own instructions. Yes. Awesome. So we'll press OK. CTemp, just for the sake of simplicity here in my navigation. Cool. Awesome. Northwind.pq. This is where all of our definition for our transformation logic and connectivity is going to be defined. In this example, just like if we were to go over to, let's do Excel. I'll kind of show you here. Let's do an Excel. Let's do Power Query. Data, get data. Awesome. We're going to do a blank connector query. And we're just going to connect out to an OData feed. Awesome. So just like connecting to Northwind, OData feed, AdventureWorks, Contoso, whatever imaginary company Microsoft has, you have all these different tables. You have navigation values that you can kind of go up and down, kind of various hierarchies. So if we go back to our connector, again, this simple definition that we just saw rendered over in Excel, we're going to go ahead and replace. So in this example, we just want to have very simplistic. We don't have any arguments that we want to accept, so we can get rid of that. And then we're just going to have our goes to symbol then. So this connector definition is northwind.contents, which goes to the definition of our let statement. So we've got let source odata.feed, which goes to this address. Authentication kinds, we're going to keep this as anonymous. I just don't have any logins here. Again, this is just a public resource. Anyone can see it. Anyone can connect to it. There's no user requirements there. But then I want to go ahead and test this. Let's do this. Evaluate current Power Query file. That error message again. Credentials are required. What do we need to do? Does anyone remember?
You need to set the credentials.
Need to set their credentials. You're right. Awesome. I love that people already like putting the connections here. So we created our extension, we created our project's definition, and now we want to set the credentials before we start testing. So in Power Query SDK, we go to that set credential button over here. We want to select our project here. So it's our Northwind that we're currently working with. The test file that we're going to go against is our query.pq. And then from here, we're just going to keep that as that anonymous connection that we kind of talked about. Awesome. New anonymous credential has been set. Let's try that evaluate once more. Evaluate current query. Come on. And I don't think that that's the test window. That's an older one. Oh, I didn't save it. That's probably why. All right, let's save it. Cool. So just like what we saw over in Excel, right? Just like we saw over in Excel, we have all the different tables that have been returned from this OData feed. And then Kristian, I'll rely on you to mute Mohammed. I got him. I got him. He jumped out. Whew. All right, we got Mohammed taken care of.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, it was an important call, so I don't blame him. Thinking back, right, we have this table. I want to add only customers and employees. equals table.select rows. Oh my gosh, look at this IntelliSense. It's amazing. So I have my data type, which is of type table, right, from my previous OData feed return, which is my source. I want to say each, let's do list.contains. I'll keep it simple. Each name equals customers and name equals employees. I think this might need to be an or condition. There we go. Woo. And then this is our identifier, right? So each one of these on the right-hand side is our definition. On the left-hand side is our identifier or our variable that we're storing the results of this. And now I want to go ahead and reference this here at the very end. So only customers and employees. Go back here to my project query PQ. Let's go ahead and run this right-hand side output. Only keeping customers and employees. So again, our definition on the project over here, our PQ, where we're saying, hey, I want you to go and do all these things for my data. So not only connecting to the source, but also starting to do additional transformations for it. We've got our authentication kind down here again, defined as anonymous. If we're ready though to start building this project, because we've gone through, we've validated here on the right-hand side, it looks exactly how I expect. I can go up to the terminal. I can say run and build task. I'm not really too worried about that. Don't show. Awesome. So we've got our northwind.mez that has now been created. So if you go out here, go ahead and take a look here now. Awesome. Northwind.mez, so this is our mez file, so that the mashup extension zip that we just created. So all these different contents, like our images, like our definition, all of that has been bundled and ready for us. If we go over to our custom connectors folder here now, I'm just going to replace this in this folder. And I've got a Power Query desktop here. So if we go to desktop now, go to our connectors list. Again, we've got all these various categories. We could search for Northwind beta custom connector, press connect. Do you trust this third-party service, Alex Powers? I don't know. Let's try. Let's do a continue. Two tables. Customers, employees. In our preview. All right, I think I'm understanding this a little bit more. So let's go back to kind of this demo. What is in a connector? Like when you go to get data and you select your data source, like what does that process look like? Well, it asks you, hey, who are you? What's your username? What's your password? What's your authentication, right? I'm Alex. I work at Microsoft. Here's my organizational extension. Let me in. It says, yes, cool. We've authenticated you. Let's take you now to that navigation menu, right? All right, what are the things you want to look at? So if you're connecting to a database, it's like, here are all the different tables. Here are the views. If you're connecting to an Excel file, maybe it's your sheets, maybe it's a range. If you're connecting to various other sources, it's giving you some type of navigation, hopefully. And then also there are the definitions. So what is it that we're looking at? Is it just a scalar value like hello world, or is it an actual table return response? Ideally, when we return, well-defined tables for our end users, we don't want them to have to go through like a JSON structure and flatten it themselves 100 times over. Let's just do it once, and then that way everyone benefits from it. So when we talk about authentication, again, we have anonymous, which we've been using here in our examples. We have like an OAuth based. So if you're using Enter ID, it's going to go through the entire flow. It's going to issue a refresh token. It's going to say kind of the start login and finish login processes, how long it'll be refreshing there for, kind of the AAD, again, Enter ID now, username, password, Windows, or key. So especially if your application has these type of inputs, you can go and define those again within your project definition, just within the authentication methods. Navigation types. So we have either a flat navigation or a multi-level navigation. So here in this example, a flat navigation is just here's your source, here are 3 tables. And the right-hand side multi-level, it could be like a bunch of servers on the left, and then you expand that and it's a bunch of databases underneath. So various hierarchical nesting that you could see. You could expect that with maybe like an Excel file as well, where it has like different inputs there, of like range values. Just you have that flexibility to define the navigation style for your end users here through your connector. And then Power Query customer connector certification. As you begin to learn more, as you're developing this over and over again, you're like, this is amazing. I want everyone that I know to use this connector. We're a service provider. It would be amazing if we could have this source directly for our customers as well. That's incredible. At Microsoft, the connector certification process is you are the partner connector developer. You support it. You know when your APIs are changing. You know when things are going to be updated within your source. They're maintained by you and supported by you. So as you go through the Power Query connector list today, a lot of those are not developed by Microsoft. Those are developed by the actual service provider. Microsoft, though, goes through a certified kind of process here, and we also distribute those connectors. So we make sure that there's no malicious code, that everything is doing as it's intended and as it's described. And then from there, we'll start distributing it just through Power BI Desktop and then also through our Power Query Online with data flows. So you could expect to see your connector just showing up in multiple different places. Of course, if you're interested, this link has all the details. Again, the repository has a lot of that as well. But let me get back to actually developing. So let's get into VS Code. We've got this amazing connector now that we've developed, we've deployed, we've seen it in our browser. I want to create, though, one using Open Weather. So this is going to be Open Weather Map, just API. They've got some free API calls over here. So 1,000 API calls for free. Again, if you're connecting to REST API endpoints, this is just a really fun way to kind of get your hands on experience and then just start building your own, seeing what it's like. So for this one, they have API keys that we can get. So within your profile, you can manage your keys. Don't worry, after today, I'll go ahead and delete my key that you're going to see on the screen. So it's not going to be just sitting out there waiting for you. You can get your own. So we're going to do File, do a new window, and then help once more. How do I create that extension? Where did I go? Did I remember again?
Power Query SDK.
SDK, yes, I love it. All right, people are remembering the clicks. So we go to our Power Query SDK, create an extension project. I'm going to call this one Open Weather. Store at CGIS temp. Again, I'm just looking for the narrowest path of success. Awesome. Project definition, our test over here. I want to update this. So we talked about the API key. When we thought about our navigation into our connectors, that get data experience, we click the connector. The next thing it asks is authentication, right? So when that authentication flow is happening, what do I want to do? I want to ask for a key. Let's go ahead and comment that out. We're going to ask for a key here. And first item, I'm just now a little bit of documentation so I know what I'm doing. Label for my UI window. And then the key label is what I'm going to ask for. And this is going to be API key. Okay, cool. So I got that done. I feel pretty good there. Next one up is going to be kind of the actual definition of my project. So don't worry, I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit quickly just in the context of time here because I want to show a lot. Open Weather .content. So this is the name of our query. The arguments here are going to be latitude and longitude. And also, what's the path? So I've got this API definition here. Data /2.5. The API key I'm going to get from my current credential. So that key that we referenced down here, the key. And I'm going to create a web.contents call just using Power Query, where I'm going to go ahead and build out the path. So I'm going to say the URL is this. The relative path is going to be this. That I define credentials are going to be just manual. And then my query is going to be defined by my lat, my long, and then my API key. So I'm going to go ahead and build that query string here with our URL. Awesome. Whew. So let's go ahead and hit save. I'm going to go ahead and run this here, if you don't mind, our build task. Yes, let's build this current connector. Going through, building it, getting it ready, just throwing it out there into my temp open weather. So if we were to go over to temp, open weather, got my bin, I've got my NECPU, I've got my debug, I've got my mez. Awesome. All right, give me one moment here. Just checking something. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and drop this now into my custom connectors folder for Power BI Desktop. And then we're going to go to our get data, our navigation and more. And we should expect to see open weather. Awesome. There they are. Open weather. So my new connector is recognized here in that folder. Press connect. Do I trust Alex? Maybe. At this point, maybe. So let's do a continue. And let me do one thing. All right, there we go. Let me clear my previous connection credentials. Cool. So let's do more open weather. Yes, connect, trust. And let me do one more here for global. I just clear everything here at some point then. If it doesn't recognize it, should be good though. Let's try that. One more time, last time. All right, so we're gonna do latitude, longitude, then our path. So in this example, we're gonna do latitude here, longitude here. Come on, so close. There it is. And then we're going to look for current weather as defined by the API path. And there it is, API key. So what is the key that we're going to be connecting to here out on the website? So for this example, we're going to use this key. Don't worry, again, I'm going to delete it after today. Awesome. We return to JSON response from the Open Weather API using these coordinates. So this is St. Louis. This is where I live. This is current weather right now using that weather API endpoint. As an end user, you don't see any of the definition. You don't see any of the crazy tough work that I did. So over here, calling this web address, this web.contents, building this current credential, passing that through as a query string, you don't see any of that. You just go through a natural kind of UI-based flow. So it's kind of a simplified experience here for you. I think we could do better though. Like, I don't know how many connectors you connect to where it's just like, here's a big JSON, go have fun. Hopefully at some point, right? Like they've flattened it for you. They said, well, let's make this more of a tabber object. So like we convert this into a table. We could transpose this table right. So let's go ahead and do that, transpose it. Let's make the first row our headers. Let's go and expand out some of these columns. So maybe our Latin long, maybe this weather list, expand to new rows. Let's expand this. Yes. We've got main one. Let's expand this too, right? Like, oh my gosh, look at all this data. We've got those. We've got this record here. Let's expand this. This record. Oh my gosh, even more. This record type ID sunrise. Cool. Control A, select everything. Let's go ahead and data type cast. Awesome. We've casted all our data types. So I see lat long, I see ID 1. Does ID work? Column name, I already use this. Ah, that's fine then. I've recorded all these steps over here. Let's take this. Let's go ahead and throw this in. So all this crazy code that we started with, we could actually use the UI to help us design instead. So it doesn't always have to be staring at a code editor here in VSCode. You could be using the actual Power Query interface, whether it be through Excel, whether it be through, again, Power BI Desktop, or even like Power Query Online. You could have that visual kind of points and clicks here. So we did all of our transformations. We have this thing ready now. Hopefully this is a much better experience just for our end users. So let's try this. Let's build this again. So let's run our build task. Yes, we're going to make this once more. It's going through. It's building it here now for us. We're getting that .mez file created. So our open weather. Yes, absolutely. So we've got our open weather. We're going to go ahead and paste over this now and replace. Cool, updated. Let's go back to our Power Query. Let's do a refresh. Ah! It broke. What happened? We cannot convert a value of type table to type record. Converted to table. So this is the error. To go to error. What happened? Any thoughts?
You did the transformation already in the connector, so you can delete all these steps and just go to the first one, and that should be it.
Oh my gosh. So you're saying we've already done all the data cleansing for any user who is going to use the connector downstream?
Looks like.
That's amazing. So it's not, hey, here's this thing. You need to go clean it every time you do this response. We've done all of the pre-cleaning for the end user. Just like we saw earlier with like, hey, we only want to show you these tables in the navigation. We only want to show you this cleanse table. We could take this further, right? Like we could choose which columns to show them. We could give more meaningful names to them as opposed to ID.1. That doesn't mean anything to anyone. Like let's rename those, right? And then we could put that back into our project's definition. So just an amazing way to think about it. It's like, oh, it's not just the connectivity. It's not just the authentication. It's actually the data transformation as well. And then you can use the UI and then just copy and paste that code back into VSCode. So then that way it's not just staring at code all the time. It's actually using the interface to help you build your custom connector. All right, cool. So let's take a look here. I want to kind of get to navigation just while we still have a little bit of time before Kristian kicks me out here at some point. Awesome. Navigation table. So this one will be fun. This one will be fun. So we're gonna go back here, and this is actually well documented out in the website. So table.to navigation table. This is gonna take key columns, name columns, data columns, ID, blah, blah, blah. It has all this amazing stuff, and it's gonna create that navigation table for us that we kind of saw earlier. So in this example, I wanna go ahead and I want to go ahead and do two things. So I want to go back out. I'm going to update this just a little bit. Cool. So still same, get open weather API. We're still using that URL. We're still asking for the key. We're still accepting those Latin long instructions, but we're making it a little bit dynamic now. because I recognize as I look through the API instructions, the last bit here is just changing. So instead of looking at weather, I can look at also my forecast, or I could look at air pollution. So it's that parameterization of the actual functions here now. So again, I accept this, and then what's the path? Everything is the exact same. So I love this. I can have multiple tables now for my end users. I've got my JSON response. I've got my navigation table here. So let's go ahead. Let's do save. Let's do a run build task. Let's build this connector. Amazing. Going out now. Building our extension. Openweather.mez. Cool. So we've got our connector. I want to paste this into my custom connectors folder. Yes, overwrote it. Let's take a look here now. Probably. Woohoo! Awesome. It's yelling at us. That's what I wanted to see. So let's try this again. Make a new source, more looking for open weather. Our lat. API key. There it is. So instead of just one API endpoint, we now have multiple. We have our air pollution, we have our current weather, we have our forecast. So if we just select this now, it's making that call, it's returning that JSON response, it's returning that JSON response, returning that JSON response. So you're saying, Alex, we could transform each one of these JSON responses into an actual meaningful tabular table for our data projects now, right? Oh my goodness, absolutely. Use the UI, please. And then we can kind of feed those back into the actual solution here. So then let's take a look. If we were to go through and update this now, I'm going to go ahead and add a shape record into our connector definition. So back here, we've got a one function that we created. I'm going to create another one here now that says shape my record. So I want to take my JSON response. I want to go ahead and transpose it just like what we saw when we were using the Power Query UI. And then I want to promote those headers. So in that way, it's always my first row. And then I want to go ahead and wrap this around each one of these. So my functions up here, shape this record. Awesome. There we go. Shape record. Let's do another one, shape record. Let's close this one out here at the very end. So I'm just wrapping one function with another function, getting it ready. Very cool. Press save. And let's do, so remember what we had to do? What was that last step? When we get done saving, we have to do what? To build that mez file? Didn't remember that? Where do we go? That's terminal. Then what was the thing we had to do?
You mean go to run? Or
Yeah, we had to do that. Yeah, we had to do that run build task. Yeah. So whenever we're done, whenever we've done all of our testing here, we've defined all the stuff we want to do. We want to then start building it, right? So let's build our connector here with the task. We're going to do the make PQX. Awesome. Openweather.mez, creating it. It's ready to go. Back out in our debug, we've got the latest, greatest. Over here, custom connectors. Let's overwrite it, replace. Back to desktop. My gosh, we're furious now. All right, we've got records here. If we hit refresh. Cool. It's now laid out in tabular format. Again, we can go through this. I can select forecast. I can continue to transform my data even more. So if you wanted to do the complete cleansing of the data for your end users, absolutely do that. If you just want to give them all the columns with kind of various types that they can expand or collapse, or they can kind of remove whatever it is that they want, you can do that too. It's really whatever the definition is that you want to have included within your connector, you can define. So what is the authentication flow? What is the navigation of the tables that we're returning? Are we transforming them at all? Are we just returning them as is, kind of from the source? Can we pre-transform it so that way we don't have 100 people all doing the exact same steps, wasting time because we've defined it once in our connector definition? It's just an incredible thing to think about. But I do want to pause here because we've got about 5 minutes left here of my time. I believe, Kristian, unless you're kicking me out. I just want to say thank you. This is an incredibly niche topic. It's crazy to think about, though, for all of my Power Query fans out there. If you're using the UI today, if you're in the advanced editor, if you've seen maybe this VS Code thing, but you're not really sure how to use it, oh my gosh, go install it. You're not that far off from where your current talents are at to building your own custom connector. And that for me is a big thing of like, if you do the points and clicks, if you know how to copy and paste your code, you can have it in the connector, build your extension. After you have your extension, build your project's definition. What is it you're doing? What are the tables? What are the sources? What is your authentication? Do your build task. Start getting the custom connector actually built. Have it in desktop. Start looking at the actual inputs and outputs when you do the actual navigation flow. The more advanced things like the navigation tables, again, those are already defined and copy and pasted for you directly from the product team. So you're not that far off with your current talents. It's hopefully my little bit of inspiration for you as you leave today, if this is something you're interested in. But oh my goodness, Kristian, what's going on?
I love it, love it. One, let's say, use case packed in a question to you, Alex.
Yeah.
What I see from time to time is an issue when I connect to REST APIs. I do not have a custom connector, so I'm using a web connector, and then I need to authenticate. Because with Power Query, you can build like a function to create a barrier token, right?
Yep.
But the biggest issue is always I need to store then my credentials within Power Query as blank text.
Yes, and you don't want to do that. You would want to build a custom connector for that. And that is a fantastic use case. More importantly for me, when we talked about kind of the connector certification program, like if you're paying someone and you're getting data from them, you should be encouraging them to build this thing for you to make your life easier, right? Like talk to them and say, hey, I've got ideas on Power BI, on Fabric. I've got hundreds of other people that would love this kind of thing. And I think of like ServiceNow as like a great example. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, why don't we have a connector? Talk to those partner developers. They may not know that this kind of stuff even exists. If they could build that for you and have it deployed automatically in Power BI Desktop in the cloud service as well, oh my goodness, like that would be incredible. If you're an ISV or if you're an independent contractor, you're like, I want to start building this because I think that there's money out there. Absolutely. There are riches in the niches. This is such a niche topic. Not a lot of people are doing it. But I think it's such an incredible way to just like dig in a little bit deeper if this is something that is a passion of yours, kind of being the Power Query, the M language. But it's so cool to think about, like you could do this internally, especially if you and your team or your department are commonly connecting to REST APIs. Like you could build this and just deploy it amongst your small group and then just leveraging it through desktop and then the data gateways as well. Whew.
I have a question.
I've got an answer. What's going
on? So you're saying deploying, right? What I heard till now was you can let it certify or you can run it locally. Can you also put it on your gateway and on your tenant or your premium instance?
Yep.
Without certifying and everything.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of providers do. There's like cdata.com, which is a pretty big custom connector developer. They've got a lot of them built where providers are just not going through the process today, whether it be their own resources or other things. You can go out there, you can buy pre-built connectors, and then you can deploy them just through like local data gateways. Again, for me, like I try and encourage everyone to like, oh my gosh, actually go through the connector certification process. I think we've got 180 plus, maybe approaching 200 now. It could be up in the hundreds, and there's no reason why we can be at 400 or 500. Why don't I have a YouTube API connector? Like that to me is like, what are you doing, Google? Let's build this. I know community members have done it. but it actually be the provider that certifies it. So I, as Alex, cannot build a connector and distribute it for Google. Google actually has to go through that process. It's cool though for me, just as a Power Query fan, to say my talents aren't just limited here to this desktop application. I could actually start building this stuff. And it's just such a niche topic. Like, I'm so excited that people are here in attendance today, asking some questions, coming off mute, relaying instructions back to me. A lot of it, again, it seems scary, but it's actually super easy whenever you kind of get into it. So, Kristian, I think I'm at time, but oh my goodness. Yeah, go ahead.
On this note, software it's easy to build is mostly not the professional grade one. Right?
Yeah.
So what does it need to have to build a really good connector which people will appreciate? You want to certify and publish to the.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope if you're a kind of an ISV or data provider, it just provides that much more satisfaction and opportunities for your customers to take advantage of their data. Otherwise, I'd be like, my org uses Power BI, and if you don't connect to Power BI, I'm kicking you out. Like, that could be their approach, right? For me, like, anytime I use a service, my first impression is always like, this is great. How do I get my data out? Because I want to do analytics, right? It could be Spotify listening. It could be like social media, other things. I just want to have the easiest path to my data as possible. Whether it be through REST API endpoints, if they provide me a SQL Server connection, that's amazing too. But that's what I kind of think about with a lot of these options, is just the stickiness and kind of the customer passion, whenever they can really get to their data as quickly as possible. Awesome. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing then. I'll be hanging out in the chat for anyone that has additional questions, but please take advantage of the repository, the follow along instructions, and then the recording after today as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Alex, thank you very much. Perhaps one last question from my side. Talking about authentication, do you know if we, and at which point in time perhaps, will support Key Vault integration?
Key Vault is coming up very soon. The P in Fabric is for patience, so please be patient with us. And then I know there'll be some big announcements kind of after Ignite. We did announce Key Vault at FabCon Europe, and then I do know that it's going through some private preview bug bashing right now. So great. If people are interested, contact your Microsoft account teams, please.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we hand over now to our second speaker. I saw Gerhard has sneaked in. So welcome to the club, Gerhard. Very nice to see you and having you here. And with that, I would say the stage is all yours. Feel free to introduce yourself and kick off the session.
Sure. Yeah, let me share my screen. I prepared some slides, but I promise most of the presentation will actually be a demo. So let me start this one.
We can see, but the yeah, that's good.
I know. Okay, awesome. So you've already seen like 1 full hour of VSCode by Alex. We'll continue there. So what I'll be doing in the next hour, and probably will take a bit longer, I'll give you a brief introduction in the extensions that I've built to manage Power BI and also Fabric from within VSCode. Before that, I'll give you also a brief introduction to who I am. So my name is Gerhard. I'm living in Austria, next to Vienna actually, so it's not too far to Switzerland. I'm working at a company called Pico, where we build data and AI solutions for our customers in all the German-speaking areas, so also in Switzerland. I'm Microsoft MVP for almost 10 years now. Blogging not so frequently in the past, but also some interesting blog posts there. And in my free time, I mostly develop VSCode extensions because I really got into it. There is 3 that you can use, actually 4, but anyway. The 2 that I will be demoing today, the Power BI Studio extension, the Fabric Studio extension is the type on the slide. And I've also built another one for Databricks, which was actually my very first one. So if you like what you're seeing today for Power BI and Fabric, you might also want to check out the Databricks one. Everything that you're seeing in the next hour is open source. You can have a look at the source code. You can also contribute if you're into that. That I would really appreciate it. And yeah, if you ever want to have any questions or you want to reach out to me, you find my email and also my Twitter handle here. Okay, so brief agenda. I'll give you an idea, show you like why I came up with the idea of building VS Code extensions for Power BI and for Fabric. Show you how it was actually implemented, highlight some features, and then we jump directly into the demos. So the idea was actually an old one. When working with Power BI, you probably realized that the web UI is, well, not very user-friendly, let's put it like that. Especially when it's, for example, it's about like getting to the refresh history. So you need to check the refresh history of a particular data set. It takes you like 10 clicks to actually get there, and it's super time consuming. And also not all functionality that exists in Power BI is surfaced in the web UI. So these were like the main reasons for me to think of what can be improved in Power BI and Fabric and how you can manage it in a better way. In the past, I've used PowerShell a lot to, for example, call the various Power BI APIs. And I was already using VS Code for that, so I was running PowerShell codes from VS Code. And then at some point, I decided that I also want to build something similar to our Databricks extension, also for Power BI. So the Databricks extension was the very first one that I built. It's also like basically a nice UI on top of existing APIs. And for Power BI and Fabric, it's the very same. So the extension is basically 100% based on the APIs that are exposed, and just puts a nice UI on top of it. That's the general idea of those extensions. And the another nice thing about building everything in VS Code is that there is a huge ecosystem around VS Code, where, for example, other extensions like the Timdle extension from Microsoft natively integrates into all other VS Code extensions that, for example, show Timdle files. So that's really cool. You'll see it in action afterwards. But these were mainly the main reasons and motivations for me to build the extensions. And then I also shared them with the community. So as I said, like all of this is open source. You can find all of them in the App Store. You can just download them. Yeah. You might be asking yourself why there is two different VS Code extensions. So initially I was thinking of like building, so the Power BI extension was there first. And I thought of integrating also the Fabric APIs into the Power BI extension. But it got a bit too complicated with the different APIs, different authentication, and so on and so forth. So I decided to build two separate ones. For the implementation itself, it's basically built in TypeScript and Node.js and JavaScript. And as I mentioned, it's basically just a wrapper for the existing REST APIs. Everything that you see is basically based on the REST APIs for Power BI and Fabric. Okay. Another nice thing about VS Code is there is like a built-in authentication mechanisms for Microsoft, for the Azure Entra ID. So, which is pretty cool because you don't have to re-enter your credential each and every time you open VS Code, as it is, for example, for Tabular Editor or DAX Studio, where you always have to put in your credentials over and over again. I'm also showing some more advanced features which are not part of the REST API. That's mainly relates to Timdle and Tabular Object Model capabilities like backup and restore, which are not yet available via REST API calls. Okay, so how can you start using these extensions? So as I mentioned, like both of them are available in the App Store in the VSCode Marketplace. So you can just install them from there. I'll also briefly show you that afterwards. Once they are installed, you can configure them. There is a set of configurations that you can do. You can do those directly from VSCode, the regular settings menu, so it integrates there very well. Not too much to say here. For the authentication, like when you first start the extension, it will ask you for credentials. You just click allow, and once you sign in with Microsoft, this regular browser pops up asking you for your account, then you enter your credentials and so on. And then if you're already connected, then you can just pick another account if you want to switch accounts, for example. The Power BI extension itself consists of a set of 3 views. That's what those menus on the left side are called. There's one, the main one for the workspace that allows you to browse the workspace and all the data sets in there and reports. And there are 3 minor ones that you see on the right side, which is for managing capacities, managing deployment pipelines, and also viewing gateways and gateway data sources. Okay. Another feature that's coming with the Power BI extension is so-called Power BI notebooks. As I'm working a lot with notebooks in my daily business for data engineering, I also implemented or wanted to use notebooks when working with the APIs. So there's like a notebook kind of interface to interact with the Power BI REST APIs, which features like IntelliSense, so it shows you all the APIs that exist at a given URL. It allows you to run DEX statements directly from VSCode. It allows you to run GraphQL queries from VSCode, etc. There is some support for variables, so that you can easily like run the same code on different workspaces. For example, you define like a variable for your workspace ID, and then you can run the very same code easily for different workspaces. I'll demo all of this, so no worries if you don't fully understand what I'm talking about here. So TMDL integration, you can now basically open an online data set from the Power BI service within VSCode as a TMDL file, modify those TMDL files, and publish the changes back to the Power BI service. So you wouldn't need to have like tabular editor anymore. You could just do everything from VSCode if you are familiar with the TMDL file format and how you can modify and do things in there. That's pretty cool. You can also validate your TMDL and deploy it from here, as I said. Yeah. For the Fabric extension, you will also see something similar, which also allows you to modify TMDL, but on top of that, also allows you to modify notebooks, pipelines, reports, and I think mirror databases. So basically everything that supports this definition APIs from Fabric. Okay, that's again really cool. And the last thing that I want to mention is that everything that you will be seeing here, even though I demo it in my VSCode, in my local VSCode installation, in VSCode desktop, you can do everything also in the browser directly. You can just navigate to vscode.dev, install the extensions, and you're basically ready to go. Okay, so there is no dependency to any local installation or anything else. So that's pretty cool because like I'm working as a consultant, and sometimes the local installations are very limited if VS Code is installed at all. But it for now always worked to just go to vscode.dev and install everything from there. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, I would now then start with the demos. Any questions up front?
I don't see any questions in the chat, so kick off the demo.
Okay. close everything again. Save. Okay, so as I said, both of the extensions are part of the marketplace or are available in the marketplace. So you can just like go to the extension tab, type Power BI, and you'll find Power BI Studio. You can also take the extension pack that bundles the Power BI Studio with the Timble extension, I think with the Power Query extensions and DAX extension that does some syntax highlighting. And that's exactly the interaction and the compatibility that I mentioned before, that allows you to use different extensions together to get the best experience for you. So that's pretty cool. As I said, like same for Fabric Studio. And just find it here, right click, click it, and install it from here. Okay, once it's installed, you'll find a new tab on the left side which says, okay, Power BI Studio. And from there, you can already start like browsing your workspace. If you happen to have a lot of different workspaces, I also recently implemented a filter so that you can specify a filter. It's basically a regex on the workspace name, and it allows you to filter out individual workspaces. Okay. Most of the things that I'll be demoing is in the dev workspace. Once you drill down, you get all an information about all the objects that exist in your workspace. As this is the Power BI extension, it's only focusing on things that are surfaced via the Power BI APIs. So you will see datasets, reports, dashboards, and also data flows. At the bottom, there's also a permissions tab. So if you're interested in who's actually allowed to see that workspace and what permission he or she has, you can also easily find it here and don't have to navigate into workspace, manage access, blah, blah, blah. You just find it here. Okay, let's stick to the datasets for now. There is the first thing that you will see is the parameters. So you can get a list of all the parameters within VSCode. And what you can also do is you can modify them. I'll show you. Yeah, you can take anyone. So you would just like click on this edit button or update button, type the name, the new value, and it would update the parameter for you. Okay. You can also run update parameters, and then it would just go through all the defined parameters and ask you for new values. This takes about like 2 seconds, and then the parameter is updated. And then, like, for example, if you change the server name, you can just run another refresh. So for example, if you deploy it from dev to test and you manually update the server name, you do it like that, and then you just go to refreshes, like right click on refresh, and then it would allow you to refresh the data set. Let me just check to get a list of all the refreshes. Exactly. Okay, so the next tab that you would see is the refreshes tab, which gives you a list of all the refreshes that have been done or that are basically returned by the API. You would also see failed refreshes, but well, all of them succeeded for now. If you click on them, you can also get some more details. So they are executed via the Enhanced Refresh API, which give you much more details than what you would see in the web UI. Okay, so you see all the individual tables that have been loaded and their partitions. So for example, you see that fact internet sales, the 2025 partition has been completed, etc. And also, if there were an error, you would get much better, much more detailed error information, right? Those, as I said, are only for those refreshes triggered from VSCode, like from this extension, or from any other tool that uses the Enhanced Refresh API. If you want to trigger a refresh, it's pretty straightforward. Just right-click on the dataset, click refresh. And what you also have, you cannot only do a full process, you can also do all the other types of processes that are available for premium capacities, like if you're running on a premium capacity, obviously, or fabric capacity. That might be interesting for some more advanced scenarios. You can also do like a full refresh without, or like ignoring the refresh policy. So if you have like refresh policy defined, if you click refresh in the web UI, it will basically just refresh what you have defined in your incremental refresh policy, but not any historic partitions. So what you can do here is you can do a full refresh without the incremental refresh policy, and then you would basically do a kind of like a real full refresh of the data set. Okay. Next thing, you can also browse kind of like the tables that are in the data set. So from VSCode, you basically see all the tables that are defined in that data set. You can further drill down into each individual table, get a list of all the columns, see what columns are in there. In the tooltip, you always basically get all the information that's available by the API. So it's always worth having a look there to see like data type, description, what the summarization is, etc. So it really provides a lot of information here. Besides the columns, you can also have a look at the measures. As of now, the measure definition is only surfaced here. So like the expression is obviously very straightforward here. But I'm thinking of also exposing this like in a new editor on the right side so that it gets like more, that it's easier to see and also maybe to modify. Yeah, also what you do have here is the partitions. Get a list of all the partitions. You see when they have been processed the last time. And what you can also do is you can select a set of partitions, right-click them, refresh, and it will basically just refresh those 4 partitions. Okay, so if you want to selectively refresh individual partitions, you can do it directly from here. Let's have a look at the refresh. That's the one from now. And as you can see, it just refreshed those 4 partitions. It's not much data in there. That's why it just took a couple of seconds. So you can do very fine-grained refreshes from VSCode, which is also something that's not possible with the web UI. Yeah, that's it for the refreshes. Let me briefly check what's in this. Yeah, okay, perfect. Some other features that you have, you can load column statistics, which would then give you the statistics, like how many distinct values are in there, etc. for each table. It can also be quite valuable information if you don't know if all the data has been loaded, etc. Then another nice feature, it's actually in cooperation with another MVP. You can right-click on the data set and click Show Memory Statistics. That basically, like from Hariharan Rajendra, some DAX statements that query the info functions, the DAX info functions, and then provide this information in an easy to consume way. So it's like a lightweight version of Vertipaq Analyzer that can give you like the total size of a particular table, the number of, I don't know, number of rows, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's working on the table level. It's also on the column level, and also there's another one for relationships. If you have any DAX queries that you want to share and want to have integrated there, just pass them to me, and I'm happy to add them. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for data sets. I'll cover the the Timble afterwards. Yeah, well, also on some nice feature. If you're familiar with Power BI external tools that you can install and run directly from Power BI desktop, I basically hooked into that and also implemented a way to run or to connect to external tools from VSCode. So as of now in my environment, I have like those 3 installed, like ALM Toolkit, Text Studio, and Tabular Editor. I can just right-click my data set, click Tabular Editor or whatever tool I want to start, and it will basically start that tool with the connection of the data set that I've clicked it on. So basically, especially for Power BI, that saves you the way of or the way to the UI and copy the connection string, etc. Yeah, I still need to log in. I'm not sure why it's not showing anything here. I seems I can still click something. I hope I've chosen the right one. No. Try that again. I don't know why the connection dialog was broken. That's not. But I think you get the idea. Okay, so now I'm basically open the external tool and I'm directly connected to the workspace from where I started the external tool. So that can also save a lot of time when you're searching for the connection string. Okay, let's close this again.
Yeah, we have 2 questions in the chat. Do you like to take them now or should we leave it at the end?
We can do it right away if we want.
Sure. So we have one question is, would it be possible to search for a special column and see it in which queries in my workspace is it used?
No, there is no API for that. And especially there is no no API that would surface the queries that have been executed. For a scenario like this, I would probably recommend having a look at log analytics, where each individual query on a workspace is tracked, and then you could run a query from there. But there is unfortunately no API that would allow you to do that.
Okay. And the next one is, can I access the LSDL used by the Q&A?
What's LSDL?
The question is coming from Steve. I'm not sure if he means large language model, but it's not LSDL. So Steve, probably you can unmute and define it a little bit.
So in general, I think there is no API for Q&A at all. So I'm afraid the answer is very likely no. Yeah. Unless that's something that's surfaced via the via Timble, like it's part of the definition of the data set, then it might be able to do something with Q&A.
Okay. Looks like Steve is gone, but okay, thanks for that. No further questions.
Okay. Yeah, if you have a look then in the further context menu, there is some more. It's like a backup and restore. You can configure scale out from here. There's also some nice things that you can do that's also not possible via the API. Some things that are available from each individual item is like that you can always copy the whole API path, copy the ID of the current item, copy the name of the current item, or copy all the properties of a particular item to the clipboard, for example. So I can say copy properties, and basically these are all the properties that are exposed from for that particular data set via the API. Okay. Especially for data sets, you can also copy the connection string, which would basically give you, the connection string for that particular data set to be pasted in, I don't know, Text Studio or any other tool that supports Power BI data, like connection string to Power BI. Okay, So jumping over to reports, there is some APIs that are available only for the reports. The most important ones, I guess, is the rebind API. So a rebind API basically allows you to switch the connection of a report. Okay, so if I have a look at this report, it's currently connected to this data set for F1, blah, 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 which is basically that data set. Okay, the AdventureWorks DB 2014. What I can do now is I can right click and say rebind, and it gives me a list of all the data sets that I might want to use. So I could easily rebind it to my AdventureWorks simple data set. And now if I refresh that view, it is now connected to the simple data set. So that's very useful if you're like developing reports in development and you want to like connect them to a production data set. You can just use the rebind API to do it to achieve this. That's pretty powerful. Another way that you can do is I implemented a drag and drop provider. So if you want to rebind the AdventureWorks DB 2014 report back to the original data set, you can just drag and drop it on the data set, and then it asks you what you want to do. You can rebind it, or you can also create a clone and rebind the clone to that new data set. I would just do a rebind here. And now the data set is connected back to the original data set. So that's pretty cool. Allows you to do a lot of stuff very easily and very efficient. Besides that, there is two more. There is some update content, which copies the content of one report over to another report. That can also be used for deployments. My little one is just jumping in. Sorry. So you can use update content. You can also download a report. That's not working always, but basically when you can download the report from the Power BI service, it should also work from here. Okay. Talking about downloading reports and downloading data sets, you can also upload data sets from VSCode. So for example, if you have a local PBIX file, let me just rename this. What you can do, you can basically drag and drop the PBIX file over to your workspace, and it will upload that PBIX file to the workspace. So again, in the background, it's using the API, it's uploading the PBIX file, and as soon as it's done, it shows up in the VSCode extension and you're ready to browse it. So you can now right-click, open in Power BI Service, and it would bring you directly to that data set. And you could already start building some new report on top of it. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for the reports. There is dashboards. There isn't really much you can do with dashboards. You can delete them. Yeah, well. There is data flows. Similar to the data sets, you can refresh a data flow. You can have a list of all the refreshes in the past. You could also cancel it from here if it's like one of them is running. You can also have a look at the data sources. Well, this one doesn't have one, but it would like give it a list, obviously. Yeah, that's basically it. Permissions, we had a look already. Yeah. So that's it for the workspace tab. There is also a integration with deployment pipelines. So I have a deployment pipeline prepared that has like the dev workspace, the test workspace, the QA, and the prod workspace. In the dev workspace, you see all the items that you've seen before. You can just select individual items, click deploy selection, enter some comments. deployed now. And what's also very nice is you can also decide whether you, like if the target workspace contains an app, whether you want to update that app. That's something that's only available via the deployment API. Okay, I don't have an app, I click no now, but if that's a scenario that you have, it would be one way to automatically or programmatically update the app. If I now go into my target workspace or the next stage, the test stage, click refresh, then this data set shows up. The other one, I think I selected 2. It should also show up in a second, hopefully. But I think you get the idea. So you can now do selective deployments from VSCode. Okay, there's still an operation running for deployment of the dataset. So that's also pretty cool. You don't have to work with the messy deployment pipeline UI anymore, so you can just do it directly from here. Then there is still the capacities left and the gateways. Let me open both. Capacities, I think it's only working for if you're like an administrator or an admin of a capacity, obviously. And then it would give you a list of all the capacities that you have access to. There are some API, I think that's the trial one. You can give you like a list of all the refreshables that exist on that capacity. So basically, it's that just stuff that exists in the API. I just implemented it. Yeah. But it can give you like a brief overview of what exists there in terms of capacity and what's hosted on them. The very same also for gateways. If you have like an on-prem data gateway, you can see it here. Have a look at the connection and so on. You'll see a more advanced version of this in the Fabric extension that I'll be showing next. But yeah, so this is just to get an idea. Yeah, notebooks. So far you've only seen stuff that you can do via the VSCode UI. But obviously there are more advanced things that can be done with the API, but are not yet, or maybe never will be surfaced in the VSCode UI. So what I've implemented is so-called Power BI notebooks. So you can open a notebook like this. So just select the item, and then basically that item is your starting point. There is at the very top, it creates like a set API path for you. So that's the root path. And from now on, whenever you type /, it gives you all the APIs that are available on top like for that particular workspace in this case. So it can give you like so it should. That's weird. It should give me data sets. Okay, there's something broken with the auto-completion. And I think you get the idea. Let's start from the beginning. So you can use like this dot for a relative path, but you can also just use a / and then it allows you to navigate into your groups or like the workspaces. You can select the workspace and you can say, okay, I want to like get a list of data sets, for example. You can also say, okay, I want to like select an individual data set and run a refresh. There should be post refresh, and then it basically gives you like a way how you can run a refresh via the API with some more advanced options that are supported by the API. So the examples that you see here is say those are examples like the two. Basically taking all the descriptions and examples from the rest from the official documentation. Okay. So this would be like if you want to process individual partition, that's an example of how you can do it, or whether you want to like apply a refresh policy and so on. And that's working basically for all API endpoints that exist within Power BI. So that's pretty powerful. You can also like chain those different API calls together if you I don't know, like want to run them on different workspaces. So that's working pretty well. And yeah, allows you to basically run any arbitrary API call directly from VSCode without having to deal with authentication or anything. So that's again like super powerful. Questions? Because I think that's it for the Power BI extension.
No question. Steve just clarified what LSDL stands for. Is the language specification definition, which you can import and export through the Q&A setting.
I don't think there is an API for that.
Yeah, me neither. Just answered there is no API.
Yeah. Okay, if you have it, then pass it over to me and I'll see what I can do to integrate it. Okay. Okay, so let me see if I forgot anything. I showed the notebooks, showed the refreshes and everything, the pipelines. Yeah, I think that's it basically for the Power BI extension. So then I would jump over to the Fabric extension. So that's the dev environment. So I'm doing like a live demo here of the current state. Hope everything works fine. So similar to the Power BI extension, when you install the Fabric extension, you get a new tab on the left side. You again get some different tree views. There's also an integration with deployment pipelines, and there is also a connections dialog. Let me start with those first. It's basically the very same. Most of the code is copied and just adopted to the different APIs that exist in Fabric. And you can basically do the very same that you could do that you have already seen in the Power BI extension. Some of the icons here are missing. That's, well, I wouldn't say by design, but I'm relying on some icons provided by Microsoft, and they just don't provide any proper ones for deployment pipelines and the different stages. So that's why they don't show up. For semantic models and the items themselves, they show up. So you see like a notebook icon here, or a semantic model icon, etc. And again, you can just select different ones, click the deploy to next stage, and it will do the deployment for you. So that's, yeah, it's, as I said, it's the very same as in the Power BI deployment pipelines, except that it's also supporting Fabric items like notebooks, data pipelines, whatever. The other thing, connections, that has just been recently added, allows you to browse all the connections that you have access to. So even if they are not like on a gateway, so if it's like your personal connection or if it's a shared cloud connection, it will show up here. So Tenant Cloud is the folder that shows you all the shared cloud connections that you have access to. If you click on one of them, you get all the information that's available for that particular connection. So what credentials are used, whether it's a service principal or OAuth, what users have access to it, what permissions those users have, etc. So it gives you a lot of information about the connection ID, the cluster ID, like if, yeah. So that's super useful information. Same for the personal, if you have like a personal connection, and also for gateway connections. So if you have like a gateway installed and you have like the connections hosted on them, you can also browse them from here. Just click them and then you get all the details. So that's pretty cool. What you can also do is, again, there is some filtering for the connections. But instead of just filtering on the connection name, I basically decided to filter on the whole text that's exposed. So if you're interested in all the extensions that are related to SQL, you could just add a filter here, and then it will show you all extensions that have SQL somewhere within this definition, which makes it super easy for you to find. Just copy that server name, just one of my SQL servers. If you're really interested in connections pointing to a particular SQL server, you could just add it in your filter, like the connection string or the server name, and it will give you all the connections that exist and that are pointing to that particular SQL server. Okay. Again, can be very useful to get an idea of where and how particular connections are used, and if there is some redundancy, etc. Okay. Cool. So yeah, let's jump into the Fabric workspace browser. Again, it's very similar to the Power BI browser. You can go into the workspace, you can drill down. It will show you all the different item types that exist in Fabric. So it's like a semantic model, there is reflexes, there is GraphQL APIs, there is event streams, there is Spark environments. And well, you can drill down and get all the information from here. There is some special parameter, well, entries for each workspace. Is, for example, the Spark settings. So if you're working with Fabric and using Spark and data engineering, you can click on the Spark settings and get the definition of your Spark pool, of your runtime version, etc., and some settings that are exposed via the API. As of now, it's just like a read-only view, but it might also in the future be able that you, I don't know, change the runtime version here, click save, and then it will update it. That's something that I might consider for the future. It's also role assignments here. What I think I have implemented here, let me try this live. If you drag and drop a group from one workspace to another, you can add the role assignment to the target workspace. So if you want to like sync groups between different workspaces, that's an easy way that you can do without having to type in each of them individually. Okay, then depending on the different items that you have in your workspace, some of them have special APIs. So for example, if you have like a data pipeline, you can run the data pipeline from VSCode. Okay, just right click the data pipeline, click run pipeline, and then it will run submit an API request to run the pipeline. It also gives you a list of all the jobs that have been done, whether they have completed, whether they have failed, whether they, well, this one is not started yet. It also gives you a list of all the connections that a particular pipeline is using. So again, everything that the API exposes as of now. The very same also applies to notebooks. Oh, sorry, I have a breakpoint here. Jump back. So you can also run a notebook from here. Okay, so if you're modifying a notebook, which you see next, you can modify it and run it from here. Yeah. The thing that I think exposes the most is lake houses. So if you have a lake house, you can browse the shortcuts. So it gives you a list of all the shortcuts, a list of all the connections. This one doesn't have any connections. You can drill into the tables, and you can also run a maintenance job, like running optimize or vacuum. Okay. Another nice feature about lake houses is that there is a one lake integration. Okay, so if you're wondering what files are actually stored in your lake house, you can click browse one lake, and it will bring you to your VS Code Explorer and allow you to browse the lakehouse, the Contoso lakehouse. You can go into the files and see all the files that are in there. You can also browse the Delta Lake tables that are in there, and for example, like have a look at the Delta log if that's interesting for you. Okay. So, and then it just shows up as if it were a local file. And you can also just drag and drop it over to your local file system. Okay, that's because I moved it and I need to copy it. And then you basically can download it. So that's an easy way. You can just drag and drop between OneLake and your local file system. As of now, it's read-only, so you can only download files from OneLake. It might also be added in the future that you can also upload files here. Okay. Technically, you could also view a Parquet file. The thing is that there is no Parquet implementation for JavaScript that would allow you to read the file and visualize it in VSCode. But technically, like if that exists, you could also easily browse those files from VSCode. Okay, jumping back to the Lakehouse. Yeah, I think we covered that. We covered the OneLake. We covered the run maintenance job that's in here. For mirror databases, so for example, if you have mirroring set up between an Azure SQL database and your Fabric environment, you can have a look at the state of the synchronization of the tables that are currently being synced. Okay, that's not working. Okay. You can also stop the mirroring or start the mirroring if it's not running. This one is currently running. You can also get a list of all the connectors. No, it should give you a list. That's just have been recently implemented. It should give you the list of connections that are used for that mirrored warehouse. Yeah. Okay. That's for notebooks, semantic models. Okay, then the last thing, and I think the coolest thing about this extension is that you can modify all the items that you have in Fabric and that support the update definition API from within VSCode. So you just right-click on a workspace or just right-click on a workspace, click Edit Items, and it will open that particular Fabric workspace in your VS Code session in the Solution Explorer, as if it were a local file system. You can then browse into like semantic models, the AdventureWorks dataset that I had. It will now give you like the template representation of that dataset. And you could like change a measure or do whatever you want to do in Timble. So you can like create new tables, update measures, create columns, etc. So everything that's possible with Timble, you can also now do directly from VS Code. Once you're done with your changes, just save it. And then it's indicating that there has been some changes, and you can then right-click and say Publish to Fabric. And now it's basically publishing your semantic model back to Fabric with all your changes. Okay. Without having to have like any local instance of the dataset definition anywhere. That not only works for semantic models, it also works for data pipelines. So if you have a data pipeline, you can now also just open the definition of the data pipeline, which is basically just JSON, change it here, and upload it back to Fabric. You can do the very same also for notebooks. So if you are like a data engineer working with Spark, you can download the notebook temporarily here, modify it, and upload it back to Fabric. Unfortunately, there's currently no way to run the notebook from here. I mean, like interactively. What you can obviously do is save it back to Fabric, and then use the run notebook from the tree view that we've seen before. Okay. What this also allows you, like this integration, is you can easily copy a dataset, for example. So you can just select that folder, copy paste, Control V. Okay, ignore that, please. Also ignore that. Things like I haven't removed all the breakpoints. And it basically created a copy of my dataset. Okay, so it basically took the definition of the dataset, created a copy. Now I can just go here and say publish to Fabric. And then I would immediately have like a copy of my other dataset available in Fabric. I still need to process it, obviously, because it's just metadata. But that's a very easy way to publish or copy semantic models. This also works cross workspace. So for example, if I go to my project dev and also edit the items from that, I could basically drag and drop my data set from my Fabric Studio workspace over to my project dev workspace. Should work. Yeah, okay, there you go. Now, if I publish this one, I just basically used copy paste to copy an online data set from one workspace to another. I can also basically take the definition from a local file that's in that's using the Power BI project model, and copy and paste the definition from here. So I can delete the definition here. Yeah, sorry, that's breakpoints. Can delete the definition and drag in, like that's my local file system here, and drag in the definition from a local data set. Okay, and then again, publish it to Fabric. I guess there is something went wrong. Okay, that's supposed to work. But I think you get the idea how you can now use the Fabric Studio file system extension for like modifying online items and also interacting and copy pasting them between local file system and also the Fabric file system. Okay. That's also working for databases. So if you have like a mirrored database, you can have a look at the definition, and you could also add a new table to the mirroring from VSCode. Okay, so if I modify this, add like a new table, publish it, restart the synchronization, then it would start syncing that new table from the connected Azure SQL database. So, and the nice thing about it is like whenever like new items like support this update definition API, you will from then on be able to basically modify them from VSCode. And as of now, that's working for semantic models, pipelines, notebooks, reports. So if you're into the new PBIR format, you can also use Fabric Studio to modify the PBR, like modify online reports from VSCode. And yeah, I think that's it. Jumping back to the presentation. Yeah, what have you seen? So basically for the Power BI Studio, all the tree views where you can like browse the artifacts and have like all the most common API actions available in your fingertips on a right-click menu, for example. You have like this drag and drop capabilities where you can like upload a PBX file or like rebind a report, clone a report, etc. I've showed you like the Power BI notebooks for running arbitrary API calls. I didn't show you that you can run DAX from VS Code. that's part of the notebook experience that I showed. There's like a special magic that you can use called %dux, and then you can basically run any DUX statement from VS Code. Showing you the deployment pipelines. I can show you the VS Code dev afterwards. For Fabric Studio, I've shown you like the OneLake file system provider that allows you to browse the OneLake, the Fabric file system provider that allows you to modify Fabric items from VS Code. Pretty cool. I didn't show you the source control Git integration. I'll cover it later if you still have time. So there's also some source control integration. So as you know, like if you like your Fabric workspace is connected to Git, you can also do like push and pull from there. There's also APIs for that would allow you to do that from VS Code. Okay, so that's also pretty cool. Also the tree views that allow you to browse the artifacts, drag and drop capabilities, etc. The rest is like very similar to Power BI. Yeah. What's next? I don't have any concrete plans on what to add next. There are some ideas like monitoring, admin APIs for the Fabric features. The main one that I want to investigate is like the ability to run notebooks from VS Code, so that you download the notebook from Fabric, modify it locally, and run like your local instance, your local code against the Fabric cluster. As of now, that's not supported. There still needs to be some work done by the Microsoft guys, but I hope that they will allow this in the future. We'll see. Also for searching, as of now, like when you're searching in the file system provider, it's only considering open files, so it doesn't allow you to like browse all the data sets that have like a particular column in there. That's currently not working. And yeah, if you have any suggestions or any features that you would like to see in Power BI Studio or Fabric Studio, please feel free to reach out to me, and then we can see if that's possible and doable, and how we can get it integrated. And yeah, that's it. Everything again that you have seen is open source. The code repository is open source. Looking for contributors if you're interested. If you have any issues, just open an issue in the repository, and yeah, that's it basically.
Great, thank you very much. I see we have a question in the chat. You can run notebook code in VS Code already today. What's the difference?
So you can. Yeah, so yeah, that's true. So with my extension, you cannot yet run notebooks in VS Code. The thing is that when you have a look at the notebook integration with VS Code Desktop, it's quite limited. So if you've used it, like it only allows you to open like one notebook at a time. And if you like open another notebook, it like terminates your session, it opens like a new VS Code window. So that's, from my point of view, not really usable. There is a web extension that's much more capable. And it also allows you to open multiple notebooks. So if you want to execute notebooks from a VS Code environment, as of now, I would recommend using the web extension for like the official web extension for Synapse. That also working with Fabric. As I said, like the Fabric Studio extension does not yet support running notebooks. I hope that Microsoft will open up there and support it using like Spark Connect or any other API that would allow us to do something similar. But again, I think the main differentiation is that in Fabric Studio, you can not only run notebooks or modify notebooks, but it works for all items like semantic models, reports, pipelines, notebooks. And it is not targeted towards like one specific use case. So that's where I would see the difference.
Okay, thanks. I would have probably something that you could have implemented in a future release. What annoys me is looking at Fabric capacities. If I go to the Azure portal and select Fabric capacities, I see the capacities, but I'm not seeing it if they're running. I have to click through each one of them. I provided that feedback as well to the product group, but I think it would be quite easy to have that as well in a nicer overview. Like, these are all the capacities. Is it paused or is it running?
Yeah. Is there an API capacities probably? Capacities. I'm not sure if it's actually exposing the state. Oh,
Yeah.
it is actually. So yeah, it could easily implement that. So
Yes.
that's the capacities API. I can just again like use a Fabric notebook, like Fabric VSCode notebook, not to be mistaken with the actual notebooks. Run an arbitrary API call there. There is a capacities API that returns the display name of the capacity, the SKU, the region, and also whether it's active or inactive. So that's something that I can easily add here as a new tree view. And if there is APIs to stop and start the capacity, that's also something that could be integrated.
Yeah, there is even an API for that. It's going through the Azure API, not through the Fabric one.
Okay.
It's quite easy.
Then it's a bit more tricky because of authentication and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, you can only list capacities as of now. Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I basically just did.
Kristian, if we can call the...
Sorry, you're super
Yes,
quiet.
So, hi, how are you? So if we can call the API and store in database, for example.
Well, Mohamed, we can barely hear you. You're super quiet.
I understood like that an API to restore a database.
Yes, to restore it in database, then you can build the Power API on top of that database, and you can do the refresh from the Power API to every time for the database to call the REST API and save it in SQL database. I did something similar, but for the refresh, for the interval refresh, and I save it in SQL. If we can have this, if we can have the same solution to be able to see if it's active or, and you can get all the details about.
Okay, so there's two things about it. So first, using any API other than the Power BI REST API would require like another login. So you would have to log in twice. Technically, that's perfectly possible. But I think it's a bit more like a very specific use case.
There is a prerequisite for the tenant to configure this. Okay, then you will be able, so you can have a service account and add this in the workspace. Then you will be able to call each time and do the refresh for example, for any data set refresh and save it in database. Then you will have Power Apps on top of that to be able to see all the details. So I did something like that. And
so is it just about monitoring dataset refreshes? Is that right?
For example, so this is the same solution. If you already have any APIs that you can call it and store it in database, and you will have like refresh.
Yeah. So so I get it. So as of now, what you could do is like get a list of the refreshes. That's something that's already in there. If you want to have like an overview of all the data sets of a particular workspace and see like the last 10 refreshes, for example, I would recommend having a look at something like semantic link labs that allow you to like get this information pretty easy via the APIs also. If you want to have like the history, you can also persist the result of those APIs and like store it in a lakehouse or in a warehouse. And then also have like the full history of all refreshes historically. But I think that's not something I would implement as within Power BI Studio. Might be some interesting scenarios with regards to monitoring. That's why it was also on my list. And that would be one of them. But I don't yet know how to properly visualize it in VSCode. That's probably the main issue that I have. Because I would love to have like a list, like a chart or something that lists all the data sets when they have been processed, whether it failed or succeeded. Yeah, so that's something for the future that might be doable, but would require much more work. Okay.
Right, Gerald. Thank you very much. I see no further question. Just a comment. It's fantastic what you have created. That's what we see in the chat. And I can just echo that. Really, really great extension in Visual Studio. So let me just take over quickly the screen to wrap up and call for the next user group. I love that you mentioned Semantic Link Labs, because next month we will have Michael Kowalski, who is one of the co-authors of Semantic Link Labs, and he will present it, what exactly it means and how powerful it is. And we will have Pascal as well, who will talk about Betsy, Power BI embedded solution that they have built. For the next meetup, it will happen on the 5th of December, same time, but in hybrid mode. So if you wish to join in person, please reach out to me via mail, LinkedIn, or whatever, just that I can register you here in the office. And once more, please give us some feedback so we can improve the user group to make it more valuable for you. We try to make some adjustments next year. And with that, thank you very much. Hope it was okay to extend it a little bit today, but I think it was definitely worth it with the content and the speakers that we had. And with that, thank you very much for staying so long with us, and have a wonderful rest of the evening. All right. Thank you, Gerard, once more. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye, everyone.